Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Nitai Gaura Haribo, Gaura Haribo. Hare Krishna. Nam Sambaraya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale. Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravanchani Visheshwari Vistari. So, we continue with this seminar on the Vedic view of the mind and psychology. And today we have to close around 12 o'clock. We could go a little bit over, but there's a second seminar coming at 12:30. So what I want to go into today, we can say is focused on one verse from Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, this famous verse, Mama Aivang sa jivaloke jiva bhutta sanatana manaksastan indriyani prakristani karshati. So he's saying in this verse, on the one side, all the living entities, all the jivas, they are part and parcel of him. He uses the word amsa, which amsa means like bodily limb, like my arm is an amsa of my body. So this is the position of every spirit soul. And after having said that, in the first part of the verse, and in the second part of the verse, he says, Manakrishtan indriyani prakristani karshati. That in the material world, these living entities are struggling with the six senses, including the mind as the sixth sense. So, this naturally raises some questions that how is it that we can be actually situated with Krishna as his part and parcel so intimately from what the Lord is saying, and yet at the same time here we are in the material world and we're not Krishna conscious, we're not aware of that intimate relationship with Krishna. So how do these seem like two very opposite positions, and yet they're both combined by the Lord in this one verse. So, what we're looking at here is relationship. And there's a word in Sanskrit which will be coming up in this presentation, which is found in the Srimad Bhagavatam in quite a number of verses. That word is anonia, which is a contraction. You know, the word contraction? Like a word like, shortening, like instead of saying cannot, you say can't. So anonia is a Sanskrit contraction of anya, anya. Instead of saying anya, anya, you say anonia. And anya means other. So anonia actually means other. And what the word is expressing is relationship. That a relationship means two others. Two others. And they're together somehow. So we have a relationship with Krishna, and yet we have a relationship with the material world. And within relationship there is conflict. You see that this word anonia can mean both. It can mean like a mutual, nice, harmonious relationship, or it can also mean, anonia can mean a conflict. Anonia is like the English phrase, each other. So two people, they can love each other or they can hate each other. And so now we take it further, relationship, that's of course very, very prominent in people's problems, in psychology. And even within ourselves, we have conflicts in our own mind. And this can cause us, actually this conflicted mind is a cause of very major psychological disorders. You've all heard the word neurosis, I'm sure. So in modern psychology they say the neurosis is caused by a conflict in the mind. And within this, under this neurosis heading, you have anxiety states, you have obsessions, you have hysteria. Yeah. So you see, all this goes back to this one principle, anonia, relationship. And ultimately, the relationship is on the one side with Krishna and on the other side with Maya. So we find in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 11th canto, chapter 13, verse 8, that Uddhava asks a question to Lord Krishna, which is just about the conflicted mind. My dear Krishna, generally human beings know that material life brings great future unhappiness. And still they try to enjoy material life. My dear Lord, how can one in knowledge act just like a dog, an ass, or a goat? Now, Uddhava is asking this question for all human beings. He's saying that all human beings, they know that future life will be unhappy. All human beings know that as time goes on, it is robbing us of our capacity to enjoy anything. It is robbing us of our health and strength. It is making us old and infirm, and finally, time brings death. I was, just a few days ago, I saw on the internet news a report on some conference in America on aging. And some of the scientists at this conference were saying that it's funny what they were saying. They were saying by the year 2075, which means beyond the life of most people today, by that time, then people will be able to live for 120 years or 180 years. Some scientists were saying, not all.
Někteří vědci tam říkali takovou legrační věc, že kolem roku 2075, kdy už většina současných lidí nebude naživu, takže že budou lidé se dožívat až 120 nebo 160, 180.
It's a typical thing they will say. When you're dead, people will live so long, but you'll be dead. You won't see it. So then the reporters who heard this, they went to some other scientists and asked them what they thought. And they were very dismissive. And they said, what is the use anyway? They said, even if someone does, he said, there already are people who live to 120, few people, 120, 130, I think maybe maximum in recent times. Someone was 150, I think. Somewhere out in the Caucasus Mountains, some old guy up there, top of a mountain, was 150 years old. But the scientists were saying, but when a person goes beyond 100 years in his life, then that life, those years after 100, are, very miserable. I mean, there's, the eyesight is failing, everything's failing. It's just that's all you experience in those years is bit by bit the body failing, not working anymore. So they say this is not anything that we should look forward to. So the point here is that everyone knows this. This is not just devotees know that, as our life reaches end, we will suffer. Everyone knows. So Uddhava, then he's asking Krishna, why is it that people knowing that this will be their fate, why do they remain mad after sense gratification? So now Lord Krishna, he gives quite an involved reply to this question. But for the sake of this seminar, I'm going to just look at one portion of the Lord's reply. And this is where Krishna, in order to illustrate what he's saying, he refers to a question that was asked millions and millions of years ago by the four Kumaras to Lord Brahma. And I will actually read this question. Sanaka Utchu Guneshu Ovishyate Cheto Gunas Chetasi Cha Prabhu Katam Anonia Santiago Mumuksha Atititirshasho. So the four Kumaras asked that, O Lord, people's minds are naturally attracted to material sense objects. And similarly, the sense objects in the form of desire enter within the mind. Therefore, how can a person who wants liberation cross over the activities of sense gratification? How can he destroy this, and the word anonia, this mutual relationship between the sense objects and the mind? Now we know from the Bhagavad Gita, Deto Vishapung Sangasteshu Pajayati. This is, everyone knows this verse. that when we contemplate sense objects, then the mind becomes attached to them, and then this leads us step by step into materialistic life. Yeah. So now the Kumaras, by what they pointed out here, is we can say a new dimension. We may not have considered a new dimension to this process. What the Kumaras are saying is that this mind that we have is actually meant for engaging in sense objects. And similarly, the sense objects are defined within the mind. So, let's look at it this way. I'll try to help you really see the essential point here. Let's look at it this way. Try to think what a mind would be if there was absolutely no impression of it, impression in it of any sense objects. So you think of a mind that had no conception of visual objects or audible objects. Or any sense perception. What kind of mind would that be? That would not be a mind that we would like to have. It would be totally ignorant. You see, we couldn't recognize it as a mind. A person who had a mind like that would have to be, put in an institution. Because he would not be relating at all to the external world. And then on the other side, take it to the other side. What are sense objects without mind? You see? Now, when you smell, say there's a big feast being cooked, and you can smell the puris. So, immediately, because when the smell enters your consciousness, you think that this is a good smell. But where is the good of that smell? Do you think it's in the smell itself? Or do you think it's in your mind? And the answer is, it's in your mind. We have this a nice story from the preaching of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He sent his Gaudiya Math disciples to preach in Burma. Burma, now it's called Myanmar, by the way. It used to be known as Burma. So this is the country to the east of India. Now it's to the east of Bangladesh, but Bangladesh used to be East Bengal. So to the east of India there's a land called Burma, which is mostly Buddhist people, sort of Asiatic people, but there are some Indians who live there too. So the Gaudiya mission there was preparing a feast. They were, and in India, the practice is when they prepare a big feast, they cook everything outside. So they were frying puris and other things in ghee. And the smell was pervading the whole neighborhood. Now the Burmese people were coming and complaining.
přicházeli stěžovat.
What is this horrible smell you're making?
Tady děláte za hrozný
Very bad. We don't like this.
To je špatný, to nemám rádi.
You see? Now, if we smell it, we think that's a nice smell. Now, in that part of Asia, in Burma and Cambodia and Vietnam, what they consider a very good preparation is, in each country it has different names, but it's always the same. They take fish and they cram as many fish as they can into a clay pot. And then they let that pot sit for 2-3 years. In the hot sun, it sits, and everything in the pot then becomes a kind of black, oily mush. And you can imagine what it smells like. So the Burmese and Cambodians and Vietnamese, they love to put this stuff, they call it a sauce at the end. They love to put this sauce on their rice, you see. This is their defining culture actually of these countries, is that if you're a real Burmese, then you love this sauce. You won't eat rice without this sauce, and they think it smells very good. And puris fried in ghee, whoa, very bad. So the good, you see, the good or bad of a smell exists in the mind. So that's what I mean, that mind defines sense objects. And similarly, sense objects define the mind. You can't imagine a mind without these perceptions. So this is the problem that the Kumaras present to their illustrious father, Lord Brahma. That we are supposed to, those who are intelligent among human beings, we're supposed to strive in this life for liberation. And so we understand liberation to mean detaching the mind from sense objects. But how can you do it? You see, it's like, sense objects, in a sense, make the mind, and the mind makes sense objects. So how do you split the two? And then taking this further, you see, it's because of the interaction of sense objects and mind, as explained here, that we have desire. So this seems to mean that you cannot rid yourself of desire. And that's a fact. I already explained that yesterday. So this is a problem, and it again brings up this issue of we are spirit soul, we are part and parcel of Krishna, intimate relationship, and yet here we are, and how do we ever get out of this? You see? Or you can even ask, how did we get into this in the first place? And having gotten into it, how do we ever get out of it? It's a very, when you consider this, it's a very problematic, it's a problem of relationship, and a very baffling problem of relationship. And it is so baffling that it baffled even Lord Brahma. Krishna tells to Uddhava, my dear Uddhava, Brahma himself, who is born directly from the body of the Lord, and who is the creator of all living entities within the material world, being the best of the demigods, seriously contemplated the question of his sons for a long time. The intelligence of Brahma, however, was affected by his own activities of creation. You see, now what this means is Brahma's own mind was merged into the universe that he had created. He was in the same situation. So he started to think, yeah, how does that work? And so the conclusion is, he could not discover the essential answer to this question. So, but Brahma, because he's in this unique position, which makes him distinct from all other jivas in the universe, he's the one jiva who is invested by the Lord with the power of creation. He is the one jiva who is the direct son of the Lord. The only one, because he appears from this lotus flower, which comes directly from the navel of Vishnu. So the Supreme Lord is always kindly disposed to his son. And so the Lord appeared at that time to help Brahma out of his bewildered state. The Lord, naturally, he's thinking that I can't have my representative of Vedic knowledge to everyone else in the universe be bewildered, so I have to come. If he can't answer the question, I'll come and help him. So at this time, the Lord came as the Hamsa Avatar. And this is the form of the Lord as a white swan. And a swan has this ability to drink from a mixture of milk and water, and he takes only the milk and leaves the water. So this he did for Brahma's intelligence. He separated Lord Brahma's intelligence from his illusion. So Hamsa Avatar's answers is also lengthy, but I have selected 3 verses. Manasa vachasa drishtya krihyate anya apindriyai aham eva na mato nyat iti buddhyadvam anjasa. And second verse, guneshu avasicheto gunas chetasi chat prabha jivasya deha ubhayam gunas cheto mad atmanaha. So these 2 verses mean within this world, whatever is perceived by the mind and the other senses is me alone and nothing besides me. Then he goes on to say that he agrees with the Kumaras. Yes, the mind does have its natural propensity to enter into the material sense objects. And the sense objects do enter into the mind. But then he concludes that this has nothing to do with you as spirit soul. And these are designations only, mind and sense objects, which cover the spirit soul. But the spirit soul is always, Cheto Mad Atmana, is always part and parcel of me. So this is very interesting. Now we don't have unlimited time here. I could develop the theme of this answer in an elaborate way, but I'll just come to a quick conclusion. And the quick conclusion, it's actually brought out in a very similar question as that asked by the Kumaras of their father. There's a very similar question. The language is very similar, asked by Mother Devahuti to Lord Kapila Dev. But what she asks, instead of the relationship of the mind to the sense object, she's asking about the relationship of Purusha to Prakriti. In other words, the living entity and the material nature. See, Purusha means enjoyer, so living entity wants to enjoy. And his enjoyment is this material nature. And similarly, material nature exists for that purpose. So she also wants to know how these two can ever be separated. And she also uses this word anonia, relationship. So, but I'm referring to her question because this brings out an interesting point. She's talking about Prakriti, the material energy. So, what Hamsa Avatar is saying when he says that everything that you perceive is actually me, he's talking about his energy. There's so many other verses in Bhagavatam that make that clear. That the Lord and His energy, they're not different. Because why? Because they can never be separated. The Lord is powerful, the most powerful. Why? Because this great power, the material energy, is His power. So they cannot be separated, the power and the powerful. So therefore the Hamsa Avatar is saying, whatever you perceive with your senses through the mind, this is all myself. And yet there's a difference too. There's a difference between the light coming out of this fluorescent tube and the tube itself. There's clearly a difference between powerful and powered. So this is our philosophy: simultaneous, inconceivable, oneness and difference. So, and we can also bring in this quotation, Vedic quotation, which Srila Prabhupada gives in a Bhagavad Gita purport. About the three features of Brahman, Tri Vidham Brahmanitat. So that Brahman, according to this quotation, is not Advaita, it is not just oneness, it is actually three in oneness. There's the Lord, there is the living entity, and there is the Lord's energy. So these three make up Brahman, the reality, the total absolute existence. So now we come back to the original problem. Mama aivangsa jivaloke jivabhuta sanatana. And yet, manaksastan indriyani prakriti stani karshati. Here we are, in an intimate relationship with the Lord, and yet we're struggling with our mind and senses. How did that happen? And the answer to this question is that Lord with whom we are intimately connected, He is the Lord of what? What makes Him the Lord? He's the Lord over His energy. So His energy is also there. His energy is also involved in this relationship. So it's a three-cornered relationship actually. It's not just us and Krishna, but there's also His Prakriti involved. And Prakriti cannot be separated from the relationship. In fact, there is a lecture where Srila Prabhupada clearly states that in our heart, we know, now we all know, everyone in this room knows very well, you've heard it, that what's in the heart? What's in the heart? Well, there's the Jiva Atma and there's the Paramatma. But there's a lecture where Srila Prabhupada says, also Prakriti is there. The Lord's energy. And she's never separated from Him. So now we see. Now we see how to resolve this baffling problem. That we are part and parcel of the Lord, but somehow we have come to presume ourselves also to be the Lord. So this means we have become bewildered as to the real nature of our relationship with Him. Which is to serve Him. And now we're thinking that we will be Him. And you know, this mistake is even made by the yogis, the mystic yogis, who after so much difficult meditation, they realize Paramatma in the heart. Srila Prabhupada explains in Chaitanya Charitamrita that there is another kind of impersonal realization, but it manifests after one has realized the Lord's personal form. You see, there's what we know when we think of impersonal realization. This is called Brahma Sayuja. So one realizes the rays of Brahma Jyoti and merges into them. Okay, that's clear. But there's another kind of impersonal liberation called Ishvara Sayuja. So one actually realizes the Lord as Ishvara. Ishvara means as the Lord of the material energy.
Existuje ještě jiné neosobní osvobození, že je to Ishvara Sayuja, že osoba realizuje Pána jako Ishvaru, jako Pána hmotné energie.
And it's there that the jiva wants to merge.
A tam s ním chce splynout.
Because he wants to be that Lord.
Že chce se stát tímto Pánem.
Yeah, so then if we try to take that position of the Lord himself, then how will we see this energy? It's no longer the Lord's energy. It's my energy. You see? But actually, this comes back. Hamsa Avatar is saying, no, whatever you see is me actually. Mm-hmm. I am behind this energy that you are lusting after. You see? It's me. But you're unable to see me. You've put me out of the picture. You're thinking you are me. You see? So then it's this attitude that sets up an unhealthy relationship with the Lord's energy. Now let's consider this relationship between the Lord and His energy from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Let's consider it from the pure spiritual point of view. So there are some very beautiful verses in the 6th canto, chapter 19. And here is one of them. Guna vyaktir yam devi vyanjako guna bhugbhavam tvam hi sava shariryatma shri sorindriyaseha namarupe bhagavati pratyastvam apasheha. So what this verse is describing is Lord Narayan and Goddess Lakshmi. And it is stated here that the Lord, in relationship to Lakshmi, He is the enjoyer. And He also is living within the hearts of all living entities. And Lakshmi ji, who is enjoyed by the Lord, she also, as the Lord is going into the material creation to enter the hearts of all living entities, so she serves Him by manifesting their bodies. Their senses and their minds. So, this body, the senses, the mind, this is actually the energetic manifestation of Lakshmi Devi. So this is very interesting when we consider what is really happening even in this body. It is a combination of Sri Sri Lakshmi and Narayan. And then in my notes I have a quotation from Srila Prabhupada where he's explaining that, this is from a Bhagavatam lecture in 1976. So he's explaining that there is no difference between Lakshmi Narayan, Sita Ram, Radha Krishna. So we can even think of this body, senses, mind and Paramatma in terms of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna. And we are there too. Why are we there? We are there to serve. So this is why Lakshmi ji has manifest the body, the senses and the mind, creating an opportunity for service, for devotional service to her Lord, who is the actual Ishvara of this, even, this material identity. He is the Ishvara.
Proto Lakshmi ji vytvořila smyslný tělo a mysl, aby dala možnost sloužit Narayanovým, který je Ishvarou, pánem této přírody.
But we have made a big mistake. We, who are the serving potency, the jiva, we have falsely assumed the idea that I am the master here, I am the Ishvara. And so Bhagavatam says, Iyam hi prakriti shukshma maya shaktir duratyaya. That Lakshmi, the internal potency who has manifest this body and mind for devotional service, she is also simultaneously the external potency, the Maya Shakti. You see, so because of our wrong attitude, therefore, manaksastan indriyani prakriti-stani karshati. Therefore, now we are struggling with the mind and the senses. Therefore, now this is Maya, mind and senses. All these problems we're struggling with. Problem of existence in the material world. But there is an original pure intention to this creation. And that is expressed in another 6th canto, chapter 19, verse. Tasya adishvara shakshat tvameva purusha para tvam sarvam jagyam ijayam kriya palabhugbhavam. That this manifestation of Paramatma being the Lord of a body and Lakshmi Devi being the body, the bodily energy and the mental energy, this manifestation, why is it? It is for yajna. It is for sacrifice. Mm-hmm. So, in this sacrifice, then Lakshmi ji, she is the ijayam. Ijayam means she is the offering of worship. And the kriya means ija and kriya. Kriya means the activity of sacrifice. This is Lakshmi. And the Lord, He is palabhug. He is the enjoyer of that. You see? So this is just another manifestation of the transcendental loving exchange between the Lord and His consort. And so this pure relationship can be realized by us if we take up this program of yajna, of sacrifice. And then we can understand the real nature of this, to use that word again, anonia. This three-cornered, triangular relationship of ourself as living entity, the Lord as the Ishvara, and the energy, His energy, Prakriti. So this requires, yes, purification, but the sacrifice itself is the method of purification. So, on the issue of mental torment, yes, we have a verse from the 11th canto. This is again Krishna speaking to Uddhava. He says, just as an improperly treated disease recurs and gives repeated distress to the patient, the mind that is not completely purified of its perverted tendencies will remain attached to material things and repeatedly torment the imperfect yogi. So this is the mental torment or mental conflict. That we have taken up this process of devotional sacrifice, but the mind has not become entirely free of this propensity to think, I am the enjoyer and this energy is mine. And so what is the root of this? So we find in another verse in Bhagavatam, very nicely explained, 5th canto. There's the expression anonia vairaha. So again, anonia, relationship, but vairaha means envy. Due to ignorance, the materialistic person does not know anything about his real self-interest. The auspicious path in life, which is this path of yajna. He is simply bound to material enjoyment by lusty desires. And all his plans are made for this purpose. So due to this mentality, he plunges into the ocean of suffering. And he doesn't even know it. He doesn't even know that what he's doing is bringing suffering. Yes, so the root problem then is envy. Envy of the living entity for the Lord's position. And on the other side, because raga dvesha, you see they go together. Raga means attraction and dvesha means envy. So these are two sides to the same thing. So on the one side there's envy of the Lord, on the other side there's raga, there's a lustful attraction for the Lord's energy. And so and in fact it is the energy that punishes us for this. The Lord remains, He's just neutral. Dhanavir Maharaj was speaking this morning on this point. How the Lord is equal to everyone. And even to those who are envious of Him. You heard him say, Maharaj say, that it's Indra who wants to interfere with someone, say in the forest, who's doing mystic yoga. Then Indra thinks, I have to stop him. The Supreme Lord never does that. Well, He might come and kill a demon, but that's at the request of others. But for Himself, He's reserved, He's neutral. But it's the Lord's energy. Lakshmi, she has this other side. Durga.
energie Lakshmi má tu svou druhou stránku jako Durga.
And she takes action.
A ona jde do akce.
She thinks this rascal, because she's devotee, she's the first devotee. She's the leader of all devotees. And she thinks this rascal, who's meant to serve the Lord, defies him. Well, then she takes action.
Ona je vlastně vůdce oddaných, je první z oddaných. A tak si takhle dareva, který má sloužit Pánu, tak to tady vlastně takhle jako popírá, jde do akce.
And she bewilders us.
Máte nás.
You see, so this is how it comes that we accept a material mind
Tímhle způsobem přijímáme hmotnou mysl.
and a material body,
A hmotné tělo.
and how we accept these material sense objects,
A přijímáme hmotné smyslové objekty.
because we are bewildered by the Lord's energy.
Že jsme zmatení Pánovou energií.
Now, there is an original purpose for mind, body, sense objects,
Mysl, tělo a smyslové objekty mají svůj původní záměr,
which is pure
který je čistý.
and can only be known in Krishna consciousness.
Možná ho znát jedině ve vědomí Krišny.
But when we give up this consciousness, then we think, you see, then we become covered, and we think this mind is mine or myself.
Když se vzdáme vědomí Krišny, tak jsme zahaleni a myslíme si, ta mysl, že jsem já sám.
But this mind, which covers us, is a material energy,
A tato mysl, která nás zahaluje, je hmotná energie.
just like the body and just like the senses and sense objects.
Stejně jako tělo, smysly a smyslové objekty.
And as such, being material, being this material face of the Lord's potency,
Když je hmotnou tváří Pánovy energie,
the only purpose of this is to give us trouble.
jediným účelem je způsobovat nám problémy.
And we will continue to be given trouble as long as we maintain this envy of the Lord in our heart.
A budeme pořád mít problémy, dokud si budeme uchovávat si závist vůči Pánu.
So then what to do?
Takže co dělat?
Then we have to understand again, what is the Lord's actual purpose? What is the original purpose for this manifestation of body, mind, sense objects?
Musíme pochopit, co je původní skutečný Pánův záměr pro toto tělo, mysl a smysl.
So, there are two, we find in Chaitanya Charitamrita that there are two divisions of the Lord's pastimes.
Přijdeme čeritáme, vidíme, že jsou dva oddíly Pánových zábavy.
One is the Paramartika pastimes.
Jedno jsou zábavy Paramartika.
Now the word Paramartika means purely transcendental,
Znamená čistě transcendentální.
beyond material conception,
Mimo jakékoliv hmotné pojetí.
achintya, beyond the power of conception,
Mimo schopnost chápání.
avan manasagochara, beyond the mind, beyond the senses.
Mimo dosah mysli a smyslu.
These are the Lord's leelas in the spiritual world.
Jsou Pánovi líly v duchovním světě.
So, yes, that is beyond us right now.
To je prostě mimo náš dosah.
But there is a leela in which we are actually in contact with now.